It's definitely about building stuff. I've been to a few. I think the last one I was at was about tracking airplanes with a $25 radio. Like, it's a thing you can do. And you can do stuff with it in Python too, even. But I digress. Everybody's gotten some pizza, so let's get started on some talk. And this is John, and he's going to hopefully show us how to not handcraft XML for Glade.
Hello, I'm John Newman. So I started a car computer project last January with the Raspberry Pi, and after going through tk-enter and trying to code GTK by hand, I finally found Glade. And it works pretty well if you can get over the undocumented features. So we'll start with a basic Hello World program. If I can, yeah, that's it. No. That's the one we want. Okay. So when you start up Glade, well, that's the full thing. All right. You want to create a working program, so you have to start with a top-level program, and that's this guy here. You click on it, and the window will pop onto your screen. And that's curious. All right. So the first thing I do is use more verbose descriptions for the ID that shows up in your program. I set it to center itself in the screen, and then I give it a default dimension request. It's just a suggestion to GTK. And then to send the menu, what's this? Oh, this is the destroy signal. If you want to click on the close button up here, then you go to the signals tab, click on GTK widget. It's a general widget signal, and you set destroy to the name of the procedure you want to run in your program. Next, to display anything in the window, you have to create regions of display so that GTK can rearrange them when they change the size, and it does all that cool stuff for you. So you drag the box container here into the window, and it'll ask you how many slots you want. And in this case, I told it 3. Once you click create, it'll put you into the properties dialog, and if you need to change the number of slots, it's right here. So next we add a menu, and you just drag the menu icon up to the top section, and then to connect the menu exit button, you open up all these little drop downs over here and select the last item in the menu. It'll have it'll say image menu item 5, and change it to menu quit. And then you connect a signal for it. In this case, it's a menu item signal to activate, and you give it the name of the subroutine you want to run. So for hello world message, we just drag a label into the middle section. We set the ID. We're not going to use it yet. And then we create type in a message there. To get the proportions to display right, I use the packing tab of the menu label, and I tell it to expand, and that'll cause it to take up all the extra space in the window. And that way, when they resize the window, that's the element that'll catch all the extra space. And then last, let's put a status bar at the bottom and set the ID to status bar. So I should have started this up too. There we go. So let's talk about the code, though. Getting ahead of myself. So here's the full source code, complete with comments. I put this stuff out on GitHub, and there's a web page I created for it that you can find all the illustrations. Let's get back to this. Okay. There we go. It's this one here. Nope. Fine. Push comes to shove. Oh, you're not going to let me. Fine. All right. I'll try once more. This one. There. All right, we'll do it from here. So, the first thing in your program, if most of you programmed in Python, I take it, is your, at least in the Unix and Linux environment, is the environment string. We need to import GI, check the version since this is going to be GTK3, and we import GTK from gi.repository. We start with a window class, and in the initialization, this isn't very necessary, but I use a variable to store the Glade file name, create an instance of GTK builder, and then you add from file your GTK file. Next, we connect the signals that we stuck in the menus, and then we grab an ID for the main window widget, and then we show the window. To handle the destroy, we name our procedure the same as the destroy target we put in Glade, and I just print a diagnostic message so that you can see on the console what's going on, and you call GTK main quit. To track the exit button or the exit on the menu, you do pretty much the same thing. And this is, I just call it on menu quit activate. And so at the very bottom of the program, we check to see if we're the main running program, create our window class, and call GTK main, and that does the event loop for us. And that's what the program looks like, so let's go back to that. Oh, there it is. Yeah. All right, fine. it's this one here. There we go. So you can drag it around the screen. You can change the size. And you can, none of these other menu options are hooked up, of course, but if you choose quit, it exits. Now, where's my shell? Way over here. There we go. So you can see how the diagnostic menus got spit out into the shell session, and that can be quite handy when you're debugging. So let's move on to the second example. In this one, we start with the same Glade file we did before. And we'll create an about dialog. To do that, you click on the about dialog top level window, and it'll stick it in there in your active list. Change the ID. Let's see, next one. There we go. So we change the ID, give it a title, a version, and we set the icon to be help-about. That sets this here. And then you can give it a website and a label and a license. You can fill out the other fields too. So then we need to hook up its signals. Click on the Signals tab for Activate. Oh, this is for the menu system. So we go down to the last menu column and select there should only be one menu item there, and you select the that menu item, change the ID to menu about, and then hook up its signal, and it works just like the file exit did. And that's what it looks like. So let's look at the code. There we go. Well. Is that it? There we go. So we have to add two things to the initialization to the initialization of the class. First, we need to change the Glade file you're loading. Create a new Glade file, and you don't change that, it's going to look kind of funny. That wastes 5 or 10 minutes each time I do that. And then we have to load the ID for the about dialog we created. And then we create a function to catch that signal when it gets selected. And I have it print a diagnostic message. And this, you just call the about dialog run method. And then when they're done, you hide the dialog. And that's about it for that. So let's go back to this guy. No. Meetup. Yeah, that's the one we want. All right. Here we go. Show example 2. And you click help and about, and there's the about dialog. And you still get all the fun stuff that GTK does for you. I last did GUI programming with Win32, where you had to catch the size change and do that yourself. And heaven forbid you should want to change the proportions of your window as it changes size. You had to calculate that yourself. So that was quite a while ago. Anyway, let's move on to the third one.
So,
Yeah.
Your function you created for the about was selected, is that just for spitting out to the console that happened, or is that giving it is that telling it to render that box?
No, the dot run method actually handles displaying it on the screen and catching the button to close the dialog and returning a response back to your program. That was a little bit of a trial to find how you did that in the last example. So, all right. Here we go. So in the third example, we're going to hook up the status bar, display a message to it, and allow them to show and hide it. So we start with the previous one, save it as Glade as example 3. For this, we're going to need to create a menu item in the view column to activate the hide and show function. So to do that, we click on the menu bar and we click this little icon that doesn't say much about what it does, but that's the menu editor icon. Brings up a window that looks like that. You select the hierarchy tab, and you can right-click on view and select add, check menu item child, and that'll stick it in the right spot. If you don't tell it to add the child, it'll stick it as a sibling to view as an additional menu column. Once you've done that much, you can change some of the other options from here, but I like to just close the screen and do it from here. So you change the ID to menu status. You tell it you want it to default to checked, and then you give it a label to put on the menu. We'll call it status bar. And then we need to send a signal back to the main program. And so in this case, it's when it's toggled, not when it's activated. And you stick your function in here. It provides handy suggestions when you start typing. I just used the first one, though it's a little bit verbose for my taste. Also, when you're done typing the name, you have to hit enter, because if you click on anything else, it'll forget. And then you'll be wondering why your signals aren't being propagated into your program. I've fallen victim to that one a couple of times. So, about dialog. Oh yeah, the last thing we need to do is go back to the about dialog and change the name to example 3 from example 2. And so let's look at the code. There we go. So we got to add a bunch more to the initialization. Be sure and remember to change your Glade file. And then we need the widget IDs from for the status menu and for the status bar. The status bar to display messages into it requires a context ID, so we've got to grab that too. And here I set the status of the menu bar to active, even though I defaulted it to that inside Glade. So you can control that from both sides if you want. And we need a new function to catch the menu option. And so here I check to see if it's active. That means they've just activated it. And I print a status to the console, and then I show the menu bar. If that's false, then they're asking to hide the menu bar, and I just hide the menu bar. And that's what it looks like when you run it. So make it a little bigger. So it doesn't change the font when you make them bigger. With my car computer project, I fought with GTK for a long time over font sizes. Technically, you're supposed to change it in your operating system's main configuration. They've deprecated all the functions that you can use to insert a font size to the thing. I did find a mechanism where you can give it some HTML code to specify the font size, and it's a major pain in the rear. So we click on View, Status Bar, and the status bar goes off. And that's about it. Quit. Huh. So, moving on to example 4. There. So we start with the example 3 Glade file. This time I remembered to change the about dialog first. It's really about the order I did it when I was creating the slides. And I'm loath to go back and redo the old ones. So, example 4. For this, we're going to do a preferences window. This is similar to the about dialog, only you have complete control over what's in it. It was an interesting adventure, having not used dialogues before until I signed up for this talk. It was an afternoon's worth of work. Anyway, it's not documented very well. But you start by adding a menu item so that they can access it. And so you click on the menu bar. Stop pointing at the screen. You click on the menu bar and choose Edit. This is where the touchscreen would be handy, I think. I didn't want to spend the extra money for it at the time. So in here, you right-click on Edit from the Hierarchy tab, and I added a separator and then a image menu item. That's what they call them, because you can stick little bitty icons next to the menu item if you want to. So then I close it, and I change the ID to menu pref. I choose a stock icon, and if you drop down this list, you'll find a preferences icon to go with it. And then we have to hook up the signals again, and it works the same way as the menu exit. And you have to remember to hit return. Then it's time to create the dialog itself. So I closed all this stuff up here so we can actually see what gets created. And you click on the general dialog button, and it pops it in there for you. I change it to pref dialog. I give it a title of preferences. And if you drop that container open under dialog VBox, you can divide the dialog up into various lines. For this, we only need 3, 2 items for controlling the message we're going to display, plus saving the file, the location and size of the window. And then the third one is for your OK and cancel buttons. So the message prompt is divided into a text label and a input box. So we have to divide the top section up into two parts. And we drag this icon down there, and we tell it we want two sections and that we want them to be horizontal instead of vertical. So that divides that area into half. Next, we drag the label into the first part and change the prompt to message. And then we drag the text edit item into the other half. We change it to pref message so that we can set the value and retrieve the value later. No signals, because the dialog manager handles that for us. So next, we want to remember the position and size, or the size and position. So we drag the check button down to the middle section. We give it an ID, and then we tell it to use the label, and we type in remember size and position for the prompt. Then we want buttons, OK button. The undocumented thing here is if you want your dialog to exit, you have to put in a response here. The responses aren't well documented, but in the source code I included the URL you can go to find the list of valid responses. They've set it up so that negative numbers are the stock items, and if you want to use your own custom item, they're positive numbers. If you ask me, they should have a drop-down window here with an option that says custom value, but they didn't ask me. They'd saved us all this trouble if they just asked me. So, we change the ID. We tell it it's going to be a stock button, and in this drop-down window, which they did supply, we make it an OK button. Now, maybe it would be a good idea to stick the OK response up there for us, huh? All right. So we do the same thing for cancel. Give it an ID. The cancel response code is -6, and we give it a cancel icon. You can just enter the text for the buttons down here, but you won't get the fancy check mark and the cancel icon. So this creates a problem because if we're going to save the preferences, we need to grab the size and position of the window as the program's exiting, but before the window's deleted. And you can't just stick that code into your exit subroutines that are already in there because the window's already gone by then. So you have to trap the delete event, and you give it a function there to go to. So let's look at the source code changes. To handle saving and restoring the preferences, I chose to save them in JSON format. Whoa. But to do the file I/O, we need the OS module and the JSON module. So changes to the initialization, update your Glade file. I created another one for the JSON settings, and then a dictionary to handle our values. That would be the message, and whether to save the size and position, and whether to show the status bar or not. And then in the function load preferences, that's how we handle pulling them off the disk. So we need more widgets. First is the label widget, so we can display messages into it. And then these are the 3 items in the dialog we need. The dialog itself, and then the 2 fields where we're going to display and retrieve data from. So then we check to see if they want to display the status bar or not, and we call the appropriate function. And this is where we set the size and position on startup. And we just look at whatever value is in the preferences variable. So I've had trouble with getting GTK to obey these. It wants control of where your window goes, really. So there are alternate functions if you dig through the documentation. And then we set the label text. The rest of the stuff is already in the file. So to load the preferences, we check to see if the file exists, and then we open it. JSON nicely loads it into a dictionary for us, and then we close the file. Now, we pass in our default values in the prefs variable, and this prefs, or this update method to all dictionaries, allows you to merge another dictionary into it. If the values are different, they'll get overwritten, and then we return that dictionary back. This allows you to add new preference items to the default array, and they don't get mucked with when you load the preferences up, and then they get saved automatically next time. So when we save the preferences, we check to see if we need to grab the size and position, and then we this takes your dictionary and serializes it into a data stream, and then we just write it and close it. There are things you can add to the JSON dumps method that allow you to make it easy to see the file. Otherwise, you'll just get a stream of text that looks kind of like XML, but not quite. So next, we need to handle the delete event. This is where we save our preferences. And it is kind of like if you've done Win32 programming, they have an event where you can decide whether the program should close or not. You return true or false, and this works the same way. If you have done Win32 programming, my condolences. When we choose quit from the menu, it calls main quit directly, and your stuff won't get saved. If anybody knows of a way to send a exit signal into GTK so that it goes back to this goes back to the main program exit, let me know. I didn't find it. So you can either generate the event for delete event, or you can just call the function. If it returns false, then you go ahead with the quit. So this is how we handle the preferences dialog. We set the 3 values we're going to track. Oops. All right, so an initial version of this program, I saved the size and position separately. And I obviously cut and pasted this text from the wrong file. Pretend one of these 2 lines isn't there. When they click on the OK button, we get a response, that same response back. There's a standard constant for the OK button. And so if that's true, then we save them in the preferences dictionary, which then gets pushed out to the JSON file when the program closes. And then we hide the dialog like we did in the about dialog. And that's it. That's what the program looks like on the screen. Where's my terminal window? There we go. So preferences 4. Whoops. Great. There we go. So status bar still works. we can say edit preferences and change the message. This is why I take snapshots, pictures of the stuff instead of actually typing. And then if we do a file and quit and get back to our terminal program, there we go. Example 4.json. There's the data in the JSON file. We can remove it, and then it'll go back to its defaults. And then we can drag it over here and make it really tall. And then when we close the program and open it again, it doesn't remember. Okay. Well, real-time demonstrations never work, right?
Is it because the OK button never hit?
It could be. Let's try that. Edit preferences. I might have said cancel. Come back here. All right. There we go. There we go. And there it is. New message, okay. The checkbox was never checked. Thank you. There we go. Size and position. Now, come back here. I'll drag you over here. Close. Run the program again. There we go. Cool. So, that's about it. See if we can get the references on the screen here. It's not that. There we go. And let's start from current slide. Oh, well. There we go. All right, fine. So the first link is a readthedocs.io tutorial. It mostly focuses on using GTK without Glade. It's got a section on Glade and really doesn't go into very much detail. The second link is the GTK references. It has every class, every function, every property, and it's got a fairly good search utility. The last one is the GNOME Developers Guide, or next to the last one, GNOME Developers Guide. It is oriented towards C and C++ work, but it's good for tips, and it's helpful if you know how to read C and C++. The last one is a user-level program. It's open source. I found it as part of my car project where I need a radio and a MP3 player. This is a program that's written in Python and GTK3 to display your songs and your albums and all that cool stuff, and it talks to a daemon in the background that actually does the playing called MPD. Anyway, the source code for that is really handy for looking through because it's a fairly complicated program, and you just step through the code to find what you're looking for. So that's about it.
Could you show us your car program?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Well, oh yeah, I'm tempting fate here. Yeah, I think that'll run it. Except, what am I missing? See, the problem is I developed the car program on my desktop, and I didn't install all the libraries for it on my laptop. I had the same problem when I gave the demonstration at the Raspberry Pi group. So I had to just walk them through the snapshots. But at some point, I'll be ready with updates to the program. It's basically an embedded device, user interface, so there's no window decoration, and you run the program and it puts buttons on your screen you can easily touch without looking at them, and it's designed to use one of those, $35 radios, and you plug a relatively large memory stick into it to put your MP3 collection on. It can connect to your home network and update the MP3 collection from your home server if you have one. It's got GPS tracking with the GPS tracking module was the most expensive. It was like a $35, no, a $75 or $80 thing I had to buy for it. I haven't done any work on it in the last 6 months because I've got other projects going on that actually earn money. And so when I get back to it, I'm almost to the point where it's at minimal level that I could actually put it in my car and it would replace the radio. It would add MP3 capabilities and replace the GPS. So more on that. The people that are in charge of the open source hardware group, I'm sure will be asking me back when I have it fully functional. I'll have her invite you. Anyway, so any other questions?
How long have you been in Glade?
Been a what?
Running Glade.
Oh. So I started the Raspberry Pi project in January. I told my wife to buy a Raspberry Pi and a screen for Christmas. And so I went through the first 2 or 3 months trying to make the basic shell work with TK Enter. When I got to the point where I wanted to put a picture in the background of the window so that you could have wallpapers and stuff, I discovered TK Enter won't do that. And I went looking for new libraries. So that's where I started with GTK. And when I got to the point where, what was it? At some point there was something I couldn't make do with doing GTK by hand. I discovered, it was the business of the fonts and controlling the size of the objects on the screen. That's not very well documented because I have to turn all that stuff off. And I ended up trying Glade, and Glade gives you access to most of those properties. More specifically, is this, no, that's the source code. Instead of using that box widget, there's a container widget you can stick in your main window that says, I want to control all these settings myself. Nobody talks about it. But I finally stumbled onto it, and so I had to then rewrite the program a third time using Glade. And that's pretty much where I am. I've got the MP3 player mostly coded. and I've got the radio player mostly coded, but the radio daemon that runs in the background to actually do the work is mostly a shell script to run around a standalone program that will tell the radio to play a frequency. So if you change frequencies, it kills that process off and starts another one on a new frequency. So nice. That's the beauty of shell scripting. So that's about it. Any other questions? Yeah.
You sort of touched on customizing look and feel and you mentioned that you weren't able to change the font sizes and colors.
Oh, yeah. Changing the font size.
Yeah, is that mainly the GTK limitation or is it Glade's limitation?
It's a standard part of GTK. And I can probably show you here. System settings, appearance, fonts. So this is, I'm running KDE, and this is the standard KDE font specifications, but when running GTK programs, they have their own system settings, and you control all those defaults inside here. And if you're running GNOME, you'll have the same kind of setup. And so the,
Once you set that here, you get those settings and you can change it.
yeah, you're supposed to be able to say, I want text in my windows to be a certain font and a certain size, and that'll propagate through to all GTK programs. That's the reasoning that the GNOME people went through in developing the libraries. Earlier versions of GTK would give you full control over that, and they've been deprecating all those functions, and some of them don't even work anymore. Yeah.
Have you tried overriding the theme that it's bringing into the outside world, saying use this particular theme instead?
Oh, that's a thought. No. I have, the question was, have I tried bringing in my own theme? And the answer is no, I haven't.
I got
Yeah.
a comment on the font thing.
Yeah.
I've used GTK quite a bit in the past, and they abide by what's called the known human interface guideline a lot, the known KDE. And that's actually the reason you can't set it in GTK itself, is because that's actually part of the KDEs too.
Yeah, it's a,
Just to kind of set default, you use whatever the default user has set on their operating system. You know, people read the different sizes, so. That's, but anyway, it's part of the KDE.
yeah.
So you can't set it.
With poor eyesight and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, and if you're low vision, I had a business partner that had RP, and he was looking down a drinking straw. He could see maybe 1 character high and 10 characters wide, and the first thing he'd do when he sat down on a PC was turn everything to high contrast, so it was all black and white, preferably white on black, and really big fonts, so that he could center the lines of text in his vision. Now he uses a screen reader.
So with the theme over there, if I like to write my own theme, will I be able to stop it?
You,
Directly inside
I don't know. The question was, would you be able to use your program to install a new theme? And I'm not even sure. In the embedded project like the Raspberry Pi, I could stick my own theme in there as part of installing the program packages, but the designers of the style guide would take a very dim view of you trying to change the theme on the user when they've already chosen one. And then the GTK police would come after you.
The Glade runners.
Yeah. Glade runners. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Whoop.
So seriously, if you've got lightning talk.